This marriage is not going where I'm hoping it's going towards. Me late 40s, her late 30s. Two kids 6 and 3, married 12 years. She left high-powered job exactly 2 years ago to be a SAHM wife, used to be a 9 and is now an 8. Is fit and has an amazing figure still. I am fit and well-dressed. I still turn heads and get lots of smiles and flirts. I make upper 6 figures as an executive VP and will be a CEO one day. I am almost always home by 7 and usually put the kids to bed. Other than my long hours from time to time, we have a good life. I have never cheated on her and have not even come close. Despite quite a PU life prior to our marriage. About 20 months ago I got a gut feeling that something was not right and started focusing on her behavior. She would wear a t-shirt to bed and shorts. Prior to this, even with kids running in, she would wear nothing to bed. She also slept on her side of the bed, and not draped across me like before. She also was abrupt with me in the morning, and the calls and texts during the day had dropped off to little or nothing. She began to come home later and later from some volunteers work she does. 36 months ago, she would be home no later than 9, whereas she would come home at 10 or 10:30. She would also come home from her sport later and later. She spent a lot of time texting and emailing. She became short with the kids and me. She also started a weird conversation one date night. I could not have an affair. My face would give me away. About 6 months ago she spent a week or two sleeping on the couch. It became very difficult to seduce her, whereas before I could just kiss her neck and we have our usual romp. At the time she would still get her O, but about 4 months ago she stopped getting O at all with me. I have never been with a woman has not gotten off at least once per session. At night if I rolled over and tried to hug her, she would push me off if she was asleep. If she was awake, she would tense up. She would also get out of bed and go in the living room a lot. During one of these times, I got a hunch and looked for her toys. Both were missing. The next day they were back. About this same time, we were invited to a party with her team, but the coach was not invited. I found this very strange, as he had been at the other parties. She did not bring this up, and when I did, she was silent. I started going to some games and noticed that the coach was very lively with her until I showed up unannounced. His face changed. And another time she needed something from him and he raced over to bring it to her. And when he saw me, the mask came down. Also, she stepped away from me when she saw him and stood between us, forming a triangle. When I saw her form the triangle, I decided to look at her phone and emails. I saw that while all of us, family and friends' texts ran back to me, she had deleted his. She only had a few days' worth on her phone. On top of this, the ones there included from him: sorry I could not walk you to the car, and sorry about last Tuesday, best laid plans. On nights when she had practice, I monitored her phone for 2 more weeks, and his texts were deleted several times a week. 2 more events stand out. 1. A new player came on the team. This woman is cute and was also flirting with the coach. My wife came home livid about it. On top of this, she came home one night saying that her coach's boss had told him that someone had said they were having an affair and that her coach had to clean things up. Another weird thing occurred. At one game, a male friend of a friend came up and asked who I was. He thought the coach and my wife were married. About 2 months ago, we had our anniversary. I did a pretty good job and really surprised her. However, on the way downtown, she remarked on a piece of architecture saying he liked it and she did not. She went on and on about how he and his wife had gone somewhere to eat and gotten in a discussion on it. She is not into architecture, and she mentioned some details about the restaurant that seemed too familiar. The rest of the night was actually pretty good for a change. Until the next day, she was pretty upset. I took the time to write out all the timelines and began reading this site. Fast forward to weeks later, we went to a charity event associated with her sport. The coach was not there, but the boss was. She had a lot to drink and a good time. On the way home, we got pretty hot with each other, but had to stop for something. She was texting someone and laughing. I had to take sitter home as well. We had sex, but she did not have an O despite being very needy on the way home. When I looked at her phone the next day, the texts were gone. I then got a text retrieval tool and recovered the texts and email on her phone. She had flirted with the coach while we were driving home and had continued to do so while I was taking the sitter home. I recovered those texts to the history, but not the message. I then confronted her the next day. She said that she was drunk, etc., that he was just a friend, etc. A few days later, she quizzed me about what I did at the party. He thinks I talked to the coach. I also found out that she had some long email exchanges with him the day after the confrontation. We had a long talk, several in fact, and went back to her counselor from her first marriage. We also had some amazing sex, but she would alternate between being sweet to me to being very distant over the next weeks. I also noticed she began to clean her tracks, deleting his emails and locked her phone and changed her passwords. I monitor her history. She still goes out and searches her deleted emails for his. They do not show up at all otherwise, and reads through them. The days she does this, she is very distant that night. I have not brought up anything I cannot say she has showed me. Since the confrontation, their texts have dropped off, and so have the emails. On top of this, other than one night when she lied about coming home and then running into traffic, she has been very punctual. We have had some long talks about her relationship with the coach. She now admits that she liked him. She now admits that some days are harder than others. She still maintains that not much happened. I find that hard to believe given that she reads his emails still, over a month after the confrontation. I have read some of the books listed on here. I have also told her that I do not like it that she likes him, but have not gone so far as to demand an NC, which would be very hard to explain as she is on a highly ranked team and has a lot of friends and our kids are in the early stages of the sport. Our sex life has returned and we go to counseling together every other week. We do talk a lot and she calls me and texts me more now. She did have a breakdown on her not reading his emails when I was on my last day of my business trip this week. Please keep in mind that I am nobody's fool and am fully aware that this was a full-blown despite her denials. I know it could have been a PA as well, but the logistics would be very hard unless it was very well planned. As an executive, I am used to changing people's minds and getting them to happily do my bidding. What I am looking for is commentary, from her perspective and from the perspective of men who have gotten their wives to come clean and to become happy again. Either via a D or by a true R. I am greatly pained by her anguish. I sense she has a lot of guilt and a lot of longing. I want to reach her and help her through this while reaching a resolution. Comments. I am afraid that your gut feeling is that this was a PIA, and your selfish DNA genes are not misleading you. The account that you wrote was faithfully done. This will help you to resolve the problems. One problem is you. You are a good provider, good father, good lover, good husband, etc., but it wasn't enough. That hurts. So you will need to restore your self-esteem, regardless of how things play out with your wife. The other problem is your wife and her affair. You do not know if you have merely driven it underground. Also, now that she has had this experience, what is to stop her in the future? Coaches have an enormous amount of influence because they are connecting the athlete. Like the liminal subconscious hunter-gatherer girl. Woman who seeks fulfillment through physical contest. He is directly involved in her mind, as you are not. Look at all the professional women tennis players who are married or sleep with their coaches. Those women play harder to please their men. She is collaborating closely on the hunt, but with another male. There is another thread betrayed and blindsided that you should read. His wife had an affair with her tennis coach. The other women on the team even got angry about it. He attempted the nice guy reconciliation for 6 months, and she kept affair going. He is going through pure hell now. You may exchange messages with him to gain extra support. Given that you have driven the affair underground, you are now in the unpleasant role of warden over your wife's heart, and you know where. This is very unpleasant. It would be much better to have her come clean and confess to the sexual aspect of the affair, because once it came out in the open you could deal with it. Just grinding. Another poster did 18 months of forensic work to bust his wife after the affair ended. You can probably recreate the records if you do enough work. To prevent trickle truth, you could file for divorce. Once she gets served and comes crying to you, demand her computer phone and all her passwords. FB, Google, games. You should be able to find evidence of the affair, and you certainly can build a timeline. Once you have a dates and facts, you can quiz her. She will not remember everything, but you should be able to find holes in her story. Of course, you should invite the coach's wife for coffee so that you can exchange information. Even if she is denial, it will still increase the pressure on the coach. Some say that it is the WS who bears the responsibility and the AP is just a so-called POSOMW. I think you should make getting rid of him from the team a goal. Use your business smarts to come up with strategies to drive him away. By defeating him, you establish yourself as the alpha dude in your wife's eyes, if that matters to you. Is filing for divorce too severe a measure to employ? Only you can judge. The adage is you have to be prepared to lose your marriage to save it. And all of this show restraint and dignity, just as you would not let a problem at work become an emotional confrontation. Keep your affair busting mode sharp. OP responds. The control thing hits home. She is an alpha too and gave up a lot to be a SAHM. She has worked all her life and supported herself since she was 16. The coach is beta, but gets a lot of attention from girls and wives. He has a way with words and a poetic bent, but he is not crappy nor dominant. He came into coaching later in life. She has mentioned wanting to help him. Her prior marriage was to a man who was an alpha and a PUA but who also was a drunk who needed fixing. She left him after 6 years when he began to get violent. If it's a PUA, that does not bother me as much as the closing off and the lies. Lying about the next session that night. Lying about being late. As for PI, my family and hers is military and law enforcement heavy. I have a lot of friends who are in the PI industry. That would be too close to home. One elected official too. Do not want this to go weird. I have everything monitored except for a VAR. Catching up from holiday and trip. Just pulled her phone logs for last 2 weeks. They texted and from texts it clear that they talked about situation. He asked her why she was having a bad day in match. If it was same subject from talk last week. She said yes. Then said he was very sorry. Next opportunity for them to talk after that text was the day. She lied about traffic delaying her. She had a 2-hour talk with a close female friend as well. She fell head over heels for me. Wanted marriage before I did. She planned the wedding. Wanted both kids. I dated over 30 women before I met her. Married once in that time. I have all emails and texts. She does not know I have them and except for what I found on her phone that time. The TT is coming out as we talk. I know when she is lying now by the tone of her voice. She is a bit defensive, trying to blame it on me in some way, as well. Following the script in most ways. Highly educated woman with quite a professional resume, and acts no different than most. Update. My wife came clean Monday night on her own. She came to bed and told me the timeline, and then said she was very, very sorry. And she could understand if I were to decide to leave her. There was zero defensiveness. She told me the complete who, what, when, where and why. What she has given me matches the phone records and other info I have. She is no longer giving off the lying indicators I saw before. My wife admitted she pursued the OM due to a number of reasons. And it was she that initiated it, and it was 80% her throughout. The IA was in full swing since spring. She had been contemplating a PIA for several months, but had yet to explicitly broach the idea, though they'd been making innuendo for some time. Hence the deleted texts found. She did a modified NC on her own late last month, but is prepared to switch teams and coaches as well. She is sharing all her emails, texts, and phone with me. Just to be clear, some of the posts on here implied I tried to nice my way through this. From the very beginning I told her I was very angry with this and everything was on the table. I filed on my first wife and with few exceptions initiated my breakups with my GF. She knew this. There is a difference between inflicting trauma and cruelty on someone, like polygraph, versus asking questions. I hammered on the secrecy side of things a lot, and when I sensed nervousness, I would revisit it the next day. We also read Glass book together, and that provided the frame for asking questions. Some on here would prefer the ultimatum side of things. I took that away and said that everything was on the table until I knew everything and could trust her again. I let Glass define that for her, and then let her come to me with the confession. I have a voluntary admission now, and she is now centered on what I want. If you think about it, an ultimatum means you have no real control over someone. The OM is not what you think. In fact, he rebuffed her subtle PA approaches. He did encourage the IA and did not cut it off, and does bear some of the blame for that. My wife showed me a spreadsheet comparing the OM to me that she did last month. They have one thing in common versus dozens that we have in common. She told me I cannot see myself moving forward with X, but I can see myself with you. The sick kid reference she specifically brought up, and the fact that our kids are crazy about me. The sheet was an attempt by her to make sense of things and shake herself out of the fog. Akea, he is a wonderful man. Why am I feeling this way? Last month she was very miserable, like she had broken up with someone. Which she did. She did a modified NC last month about 10 days after D-Day. Corroborated by a text from him a week later and the complete drop-off in emails following. If you think the sheet is weird, you should see my list of things she said, did, and the intel all cross-referenced. It is a thing of beauty. The lack of O was heavy toy usage. She was fantasizing about him heavily in late summer and into fall. The burst of bedroom with me was in early summer, and I did find it weird. The sex now is pretty frequent, and she is back to her wild self. As for her sport, she trains her base fitness, at the gym in the morning and practices to evenings and plays on the weekends. I know about being a PI. I hated doing it, and that is why I changed professions. I am detached because that is how I am when on a case. Believe me, I am boiling inside. When I used to do this for a living, 9 times out of 10 this crap leads to terrible things. The VAR and PI are subject to being discovered. First rule of intel work is not to lose your best sources by getting made by trying additional methods on the same target. I do not want her to know I have her wrapped. It is going to be hard to trust her again. She came right out after she spilled and told me that she would understand if I left or asked her to leave. I filed on my first wife, and with one exception. I left my GF. She knows this. Kids complicate things tremendously. She is a fabulous mom and we are both very close to our kids. It would shatter the kids for me to tell her to move out. My wife has confessed and taken responsibility for her actions. But part of the blame has been mine for being distant and cold to her. Being emotionally connected to someone is a basic human need for people, especially for women. One other factor was that though we got married as secure adults. And never acted married in that we jointly solved and talked about our lives. We each tried to address the problem on our own rather than jointly. Things we tried to do on our own, kids, work, her sport, and other things were not faced and discussed together. This is the first big problem we are solving together. Her reasons came down to 1. Boredom. 2. Lack of connection to me. 3. Not appreciated. 4. She grew in other areas. She is struggling with the full NC right now. She came to me every day the last for to say she needed help. The other thing to point out is that she said that she needed to trust me again as well. Had I exploded over this, we'd be having another discussion. She'd already lost hope for us this summer. The folks on here saying she is not a good mom. You are cowards. Just an update. Pop some popcorn. Wife did a modified NC a few weeks ago. She has had trouble sticking to it, breaking down to text OM every 3rd or 4th day. But texts getting shorter. But no more long emails anymore, and no calls and no meetings. This has been going on for almost 6 weeks now. She has been having a huge problem with the withdrawal period. She would confess to about half of texts, and I'd use a line "I can tell when you have contacted him" approach for half of the remaining to get them out of her. I ignored some texts to prevent her from getting suspicious. While this was going on, we talked about her withdrawal problems. I made love to her every night. I repeated in so many ways that I would do just about anything for her and the kids but would not be a doormat. I also pressed her on contacting him. See my post above on it. I kept her honest. I also gave her 30+ minutes of undivided attention each day. Told her I was here to help her with it. Would not judge her, but would not be a doormat either. I got her engagement ring cleaned, and it looks really good, but whatever, and she started wearing it again. Starting last weekend, the OM became pretty desperate with several texts a day asking what she was up to or where she was, etc. She was very good at ignoring them for a day or two instead of responding right away. In fact, I could predict when she would respond. It was when I had to work late or when we would hit a rough spot. No doubt the dude was in his own withdrawal, had no one to talk to, etc. Cue violin music. I expected this to drag on for a month or 3 more. Now for the fun part. On Sunday his texts were pretty whiny. They ran into each other at practice Monday, and he was not too happy when he saw the ring or how good she looked. On top of that, she was hanging out with another group and ignoring him. One of the guys in that group has been watching over me. After the night's practice he was waiting by her car, and they had a huge fight. Accused her of trading him for another guy in the other group. Accused her of planning to make out with this guy in the parking lot. Made some story up about another woman he was coaching that he had to go help to try to make her jealous. This was the exact wrong thing for him to do. Wife hates weakness and insecurity in men, and hates being manipulated. She just detonated on him in the parking lot. She then came home livid and let me know about the fight. She was explosively angry. Quote, "He made my decision very easy now. And I thought I was special to him, and this is how he treats me. And I thought he was a nice guy and cared. And I thought he had deep feelings for me. And I feel played and I feel like such a fool." I popped a huge bag of popcorn in my mind and just listened. Do not interrupt your WS when they are telling you about the OM making a huge mistake. I learned more about them in the process, and what her thinking was that led to that night lifted the fog in her mind. The sun came out. She is a changed woman. Has not read any of his old emails. Has not texted him. Is looking for a new team and program and has not used her toys all week. She is back in the gym times a day, talking about our future, Wants me to learn the sport. I waited a couple of days to talk to her about how I was not going to be the second choice, nor would I tolerate being second choice. If she wanted to walk, I would let her go. That bothered her for a day, but now things are better than they have been in years with her. One of the things she told me free was that I was trying to let him down easily. Sure, but just for weeks before she was saying I wonder if I should give it a chance. She wonders if she was his Monday girl, and has been talking about some things he said and told her that do not make sense now. She is questioning everything about him in detail. This shows her rewriting their past now, rather than ours, and justifying the end. I did not expect this to end this way. What the hell? It is a nice surprise. Of course, I am still a bit ambivalent. Getting the weak sack of crap crybaby out of the picture now gives me some space to think about the future. She lied to me over a dozen times about texting him. I had to drag the truth out of her about the she actively hid the I am angry that her actions threatened our family. My work has suffered. I do trust her on things like the kids and money and just about everything else. But I can no longer trust her when it comes to stuff like this. I backed her into a corner, and she coughed that hairball up. She kept trying to change the subject, claimed it was some other event from the day. Ran on and on about something else, etc. I mentally recorded her methods of evasion. She never once offered to show me her phone or laptop either. I kept pressing. But that does not sound like it made you upset. And that's interesting, but that would not cause you to be down. Since the blow-up with Pretty Boy, she has slowly turned her anger onto me. I got an earful this morning about my faults, and about how angry she was about me, about how Pretty Boy entered the picture after she gave up on me. I reminded her she admitted to feelings for him long before she said gave up. She said I did not listen to her when she told me she was not happy, yet she gave up too easily. Never brought up MLC how she was trying to ease him out. I reminded her she was evasive in protecting him up until recently. Like she was evasive about she will now be evasive about why she went into the When I score a major point, she will change the subject after a few seconds of silence. That is how she evades the guilt. Here are the things that started her asking questions, that really revealed her hand. Some were prior to me finding out, and others afterwards. Brought on questions. Double dread of me knowing something, and her not being able to control the story. Number 3 has the added dimension of threatening the OM. 1. Said she talked in her sleep about the OM. 2. Said I could tell she had contacted OM from how she was acting. 3. Disappeared at a party where her sports friends were. She wanted to know who I talked to. Her reaction was a red flag. 4. Said I was thinking about taking the sport up again. 5. Said I wanted to come watch. 6. Her reaction to other women around the OM. 7. Reaction of OM when she was around OOM. She definitely still trying to protect the other man. She is also trying to protect what little she has left with me. 1. She thinks she wants to be a SAHM. 2. She does not want to go back to work. 3. She wants to continue to work out. She had the gall to ask me last night to ask if I trusted her, and when I said no, asked me what I did not trust her about. Unfortunately, a lot of people on this channel cannot take advice yet berate others for not taking their advice. It is relentlessly divorce them now and crush them. When it comes to cheaters, anyone who does not follow the script is immediately written off by regulars. It is a typical human trait inherent in tribal groups. It reinforces social norms. One of the norms is that the noob post about being torn up inside, in a lot of pain, does not know what to do. The regulars on here all jump in with white knight advice. Cheater's script is responded to with another script, no matter the people involved or the situation or the various impacts. There is no real attempt to discern the separable characteristics of the people, their past, and the run-up in events. Ironies abound. One irony is that the cheater cannot be a good parent because they are a cheater, and did not think of the kids. Followed by divorce them. Take the kids. Completely contradictory. My comments. OP. People have their own baggage and can come out in their analysis, or demeanor. The affair is over. That is a good thing. How now do you get your wife to be remorseful? And from her remorse, how do you rebuild your marriage? One ironic but common situation is that the WS is suffering from the loss of the AP. She wants sympathy. She is in mourning. The AP is not the person she thought he was. He was not high class. She was giving you know what to an unworthy jerk. What does that make her? She will now want to recover her self-esteem. That will not come from you simply forgiving her. She will need to examine her behavior and be disgusted with herself. So, before she gets her head in a better place, she is going to be rather self-critical.